You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to or during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?
When the wolf is at your door, you're running's over, that's for sure. He already knows all about you. Cut you down, no matter by you. Now you better walk the line. Real life, real
Warning. This episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, may contain descriptions of acts of violence or that of a sexual nature and should be for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off of the internet or from some television show. The facts I'm retelling you were presented to me by the victims of the crimes or the perpetrators who committed the crimes against the victims. My descriptions of the crime scenes, what I saw with my own two eyes. If you're going to get offended, please turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. And today, I'm going to be continuing on the Courtney Coco trial, bringing you more witness statements, and you got to hear this, y'all. It's the stuff you didn't get to hear on the news, and it's all fire. And Hugo Holland's building this case, continue building, and LaCour's continuing, in my mind, to sink his client. But that's my personal opinion. I love all you lifers. Thank you for listening, and please like and share everywhere. This series, especially, this Courtney Coco's murder trial is just so important to me, and I want everybody to hear it. Okay, and stay tuned at the end of the show today for some real life, real crime announcements. Now, I left you last with the testimony of Jude Wilson, who is the one that positively identified David Anthony Burns as backing out of the house where Courtney's body was dumped on the night that hours before she was found. He picked him out of a photo lineup 16 years later. But go back and listen to it, okay? Very interesting, and we're going to continue with it today. Again, Patreon convicts, thank you for your support. So I'm going to get right back into it. The Hugo Holland, his next witness he calls is a man named Clyde Griffin. Now, Clyde Griffin is a black male. He comes in. He's a pretty tall guy, maybe a little heavy set. He gets sworn in. And first, Hugo says, "What's your name?" He says, "Clyde Griffin. Where do you live?" Blah, 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 whatever, right? The basic information. And then Hugo asks him, says, "Mr. Griffin, do you want to be here today?" And Clyde Griffin said, "No, I do not want to be here." He said, "Well, did you know Courtney Coco?" And he said, "Yes, I did." He said, "How did you know him?" He said, "I knew him from Jackie." Now, y'all, Jackie was Jitty's sister and Courtney's best friend. And Jitty was Courtney's boyfriend at the time. All right. He said, "Well, so do you remember hearing about Courtney's body being found?" He said, "Yeah, yes, sir, I remember it." And he said, when did you last see her?" He said, "Well, I talked to her that Friday and then no more." And he said, "You know what kind of car she drove?" He said, "Yeah, she drove a green Bonneville." He said, "All right." He said, "Did you see her car the weekend that she went missing?" He He said, yeah, I saw it. He said, I saw it on a Saturday afternoon riding through the neighborhood. And he said, well, who was driving it? It was Courtney. And he said, no, I didn't see Courtney. He said, I know it was her car. I saw a guy driving it. And he said, I've seen this guy around, but I didn't know what his name was. And then Hugo puts a photo line up on the screen, y'all, 6 black males. And he said, did you circle whatever number it was, this guy? And he said, yes, sir, that's him. That's the guy that was driving the car. He said, did you know his name was Ernest Veal, a.k.a. Prince? He said, no, I didn't know him. And he said, but that's the guy that was driving Courtney's car. And he said, that was Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood where Courtney lived. He said, yes, sir, it was. So tenders a witness, right, to LaCour. LaCour gets up and says, did you call or said, what detective did you talk to? He said, no. He said, I first talked to him a few years later, and I told him it was a Saturday. And he said, are you sure it was Saturday? And he said, yeah, it was a Saturday. And it was a Saturday the weekend she went missing. He said, did you talk to Coco that morning that you saw Ville driving it in the afternoon? And he said, no, I talked to him Friday. And LaCour said, no more questions, right? So they excuse Clyde Griffin. Now, the next guy the witness to call is a guy named Mike Stevens, and he was an investigator for he's now an investigator for the DA's office for Rapides Parish. But back in the day, he worked for the sheriff's office as a detective, the Rapides Parish Sheriff's Office. And basically, y'all, Hugo asked him, he said, did you try to locate, and he gave him the list of names, one of them being Jackie Hampton, Courtney's best friend, Jitty, Courtney's boyfriend, and other people that were there at the domino party that Friday night. And he said, yes. He said, I've looked for them. He said, over 90 addresses, over 8 states, and even their family can't tell me where they're at. So it was a lot more to it than that, but it was pretty detailed. And I got to turn some page. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm still reading from my court transcript notes, and so you're going to hear me turning pages and stuff. And I may not get everything word for word, but I'm kind of paraphrasing for you. So basically, Hugo's establishing the other people that were there before LaCour has a chance to do it, I guess, that they never were able to find them to interview them for this trial. All right? No harm, no foul. They're not on trial. So the witness gets down, and the next witness Hugo calls is Michelle Paul. Now, y'all, Michelle Paul, you've heard me talk about her a lot. Oh, you never heard me say her last name probably. But she is Courtney Coco's aunt. All right. So Hugo gets her on the stand, and he says, Michelle, you want to be here today? And Michelle says, nothing could keep me away from being here. And he said, okay, well, let's go back to 2004. He said, when were you allowed to get into Courtney's house? And she said, it was 18 days before they released the house to the family, being the cops. He said, now, she said, Lace, being Courtney's sister, was allowed to go in after 5 days and get the cats out. And she said, he's questioning, right? But basically what she said, when 18 days later we went in to empty the house, she said, yeah, I had been in the house before. The first thing I noticed when I was in there was the comforter was missing. He said, well, why would you notice that? She said, because everybody sleeps with a blanket, right? And I know that she had a leopard skin comforter, and it was gone. And he said, well, did you notice anything else in the house? And she said, yeah, I was cleaning out the washroom, and opened the dryer, and it had a real, real strong smell of bleach. And there were 6 to 10 mechanical rags, like, ones mechanics wrap their cloth rags, the mechanics wipe their hands on. And she said they really smell like bleach. And she said it caught me off guard because she was thinking, I was like, why does it smell so much like bleach? And what was Courtney doing with mechanic rags? Hugo asked her, he said, so where did Courtney work? And she said she worked as a receptionist at a dentist's office along with my niece Lace. And Hugo said, I got nothing further. And LaCour didn't even try to cross-examine her, right? So she gets down. Now, y'all, they take a break and they send the jury out because they got to do what they call a Daubert hearing. And I'm going to paraphrase the F out of this for you. The Daubert hearing is when the court is going to certify somebody as an expert in whatever field they're in. And both sides get to ask questions, and the judge at the end of the determination gets to determine whether or not this person is an expert in their field. So this went on for a while, but let me tell you, I'll read my notes to you what I said. The guy's name is Charles Dazelle. He's a professor of mathematics at LSU, and he's just, genius, okay? But he came up with an equation on what is the likelihood that Jude Wilson could pick even a partial license plate, right, on a dark road on a dark Texas Sunday night. Then what is the probability that license plate would be from the state of Louisiana? And just went back and forth. And then he got up and explained all the shit and the theories he used. And this is what I wrote in my notes. I wrote, holy shit, this guy is a genius. I couldn't even fucking follow it. It was like there were equations and formulas, but basically the formula he used has been around since people started doing math. He said the first time this theory was used or was ever written up was in 1718 in some book or whatever. I don't know. So so he explained how he used this theory and everything, and that the chance of Jude being able to pick out even the partial numbers, and it didn't do the 8, just did the J and the W. It was like less than a percent, or it's even less than that when you put in the fact that it was a Louisiana plate on a Texas road. So like almost no chance. And so LaCour asks a question, and it's like, well, what if you got this variable wrong? Or, what if the witness or the person who saw the license plate already had the knowledge of it? And the professor was like, well, he'd be cheating, right? And whatever. So he got certified, and they bring the jury back in, and he introduced himself, and they go through the whole shebang again, if you will. The same thing basically in the hearing. And he gave him the percentage. And LaCour tried to say, oh, what's the probability if someone already had the plate or whatever? Same thing. No big deal. Neither really here nor there. So that witness was done. Now we're going to get into the meat. All right. The next witness called is Lace Evans. Now, Lace is Courtney's older sister. And I'm going to tell you my personal knowledge of Lace. Lace is Courtney's older sister. And when I was doing this investigation, and nobody knows this except for Lace and I think Miss Stephanie, but I interviewed her by myself, and I actually did a polygraph on her that everything she was telling was the truth. And guess what? She passed, and I wasn't being biased. It was certainly, she's a suspect. It would have been a suspect for me if I was a detective working the case, but she passed. But nobody knows about that. Okay? But anyway, Lace takes the stand, and Hugo says, who are you? She says, Lace Evans. And he said, how do you know Courtney Coco? She starts crying. She says, my baby sister. He said, well, how do you know David Anthony Burns? She said, but he was my fiance for 6 years. And he said, well, where'd you work? She said, I worked at a dental office. He said, where did Courtney work? She said she worked there with me, but she quit 2 days before she was murdered. So when did you last talk to her? She said, I think it was on a Thursday at a gas station. The Thursday before she got killed at the gas station. He said, well, when did you learn what happened to Courtney? She said, it was on October the 4th, 2004, and I'll never forget it. He said, well, let me back up. He said, what were you doing that weekend? And he said, were you and Burns living together? And she said, yes. And he said, well, tell me your memory from that weekend. She said, I remember it vividly because I had fish. And my mama fish was having babies, and I was scooping the babies out as they came out and putting them in another container so the other fish wouldn't eat them. He said, and David and I were living together, and we got into an argument, and he got mad and he left. But about 45 minutes, he came back, and she said, we got in a bigger argument, and he left. Again, she said that was Friday night. And she said, I never saw him again until Monday at my mama's house. Once I'd gone over there, the whole family was over there after we found out Courtney had been murdered.
Hey, y'all, let me tell you about Gobble. All Gobble meal kits are pre-prepped. That means less work for you and less waste in your kitchen. Their meal kits include everything you need so you can save time at the store or just skip that trip entirely. I got the box in and I had 3 different meals. I had a Kung Pao chicken, crispy fish tacos, and a beef bourguignon, however you say it. But let me tell you about the classic beef bourguignon. Look, it came with beef pot roast and a beef broth concentrate, red wine demi-glaze, cremini mushrooms, cipollone onions, mashed potatoes, baby carrots, and rosemary thyme butter. It was so easy to make. Literally like 15 minutes it took Cindy. And let me tell you something, and all the dishes were fire, but this thing was like a taste explosion in my mouth. It's just unreal. We got to spend more time together and more time doing the things we love because everything came in this one single box right to my door. So see what a difference Gobble will make for your household. Right now, they're offering my listeners a fantastic limited time deal. You get $120 off across 4 boxes plus free shipping and free cookies. And let me tell you, those cookies, I ate one that was sin baked and it was delicious. Go to gobble.com/real life. That's GOBBLE.com/real life for $120 off your first 4 boxes. This offer is not available on the home site, so don't miss out. This is genius. It's taste explosions in your mouth like you never had. Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. The busy holiday season is here, and Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts to spark joy, wonder, delight, and that's exactly what I wanted feeling. Hey, y'all, I ordered a super cool piece. It's a candle with a sculpture of LSU's Tiger Stadium on top of it. And each officially licensed laser cut wooden replica features up to 4 layers of detail, creating a bird's eye view of a specific football field, seating section, and more. And every label includes your stadium's name, the team's logo, and school location. And it has a coconut, soy, vegan wax infused with sandalwood smell that creates tailgates and touchdown scent profile, reminiscent of game day. It's invigorating like fresh cut grass and nostalgic like smoke from a pre-game grill, and calming like the crisp autumn air of a new semester on campus. Y'all, I love it. I have it at the base of my TV, and I'm ready to watch the Tigers play on Saturday night, right? Uncommon Goods. Look, when you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. And many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches. So shop now before they sell out this holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. They have the most meaningful out of the ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts you can personalize. From holiday host and hostess gift to the coolest finds for kids to hits for everyone from the book lovers to diehard sports fans. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, not the same old selections you can just find anywhere. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. So to get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/RLRC. That's uncommongoods.com/RLRC for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary.
And said that was on Monday. He asked her, said, tell me about your vehicle situation back in the time. She said, we only had one car that was shared between the two of us. She said, I drove the car to work every day, and I drove it home from work every day. And he asked her about that Monday. She said, I had to get somebody to give me a ride Monday morning because I got up and David still wasn't home. And I went to work, and she said, I got the phone call around noon from her mom. And she said, I was working. She said, I had to get her a ride that morning to work because I had no idea where the car was. And then Hugo says, when you and David were together, did he ever give you any kind of jewelry? And she said, yeah, he gave me a promise ring. And he said, well, tell me about that. She said, Courtney and David said they were going to go pick me out a promise ring, right, to get engaged. So they went and picked it out together, and he gave me my ring, right? He said, well, tell me, after Courtney was murdered, did you go to the funeral home? She said, yes, went to the funeral home. He said, well, what happened? Said the lady at the funeral home came up and gave me a bag of Courtney's belongings. And I looked in the bag, and it had like her belly button ring or whatever. And she said, but I looked in the bag, and she said, I noticed a ring. And she said, I had a ring on my finger, right? And she said, I picked this ring out. It looks almost identical to my ring. So I take my ring off, and I put them together. It was a matching set, y'all. It was a total wedding set. Now I'm stopping and telling you, I'm paraphrasing, but she said I put it together, and it was a perfect match. So they snapped together, they fit together. So when they went and bought the ring set, evidently Burns gave one to Courtney and the other one to Lace. All right, so back to it. She said it was a wedding ring set, and Hugo said, do you think that David Anthony Burns and Courtney Coco were having an affair? And she said, yeah, I definitely know they were seeing each other. And he said, but tell me about that. She said, well, like right before the murder, not long before the murder, I had surgery, and it was like an outpatient thing or whatever. She said, whenever those David and Courtney were together in the room with me, and like I was at the hospital, so they would disappear together. And they've never seen, that's like, she said it just happened all the time. She said, I had my suspicions when she was home from the surgery that her and David had another argument, whatever, and he left, but she couldn't get up, right? But she needed help to get up, and Courtney had promised that she would come help, and David, of course, promised that he would help. So she called David's phone first, no answer, and she called Courtney's phone, no answer, and she called David's phone back, and like whether he picked it up with his butt or whatever, I don't know, but she said it clicked through, and she heard Courtney say, this is on David's cell phone, she heard Courtney say, who is it? Or who was it? And then the line got disconnected. She knew they were together, right? And she said she confronted him about it, them two having an affair, and they both said no, they weren't having an affair, okay? But remember, she called, however his phone got answered, she heard Courtney Coco say, Who is that? And the phone hung up. So Lace said that she worked 5 days a week and that she had a cell phone and that she had a landline in her house. And she was at work every day. And Hugo said, well, did anyone else have a key to your house? And she said, nobody but David. And so Hugo said, if we see the landline being used while you're at work and it's confirmed that you're at work, and she said it had to be him. And then I'm kind of paraphrasing the thing. He said, tell me about Courtney's comforter. And she'd been in her house, yes. And then what comforter? She said it was a leopard skin print comforter. And when I went in her house to get her cats out, one of the cats ran straight into Courtney's bedroom. I had to get under the bed, and that was when I noticed the comforter was gone. She said later on, her and Burns broke up, but then they got back together. And it was about 4 years later, and Lace liked David's mama, right? So she said, hey, I want to go visit your mom. I hadn't talked to her in a long time. She said when she walked in the residence, her mama was sitting on the couch and she was covered up in, guess what? A leopard skin print comforter. Now, she said, there's no way David Anthony Burns' mother would ever buy a leopard skin comforter. So then Hugo asked her, said something about the mom's and the grandma's eyesight, and Lace said, I don't know. He said, what about that weekend that David was gone and Courtney was murdered? And he said, you ever ask him where he was at? She said, no, I didn't. And he said, well, right before she got murdered, did you get something, a new toy, if you will? And she said, yeah, I got a video camera. And so you just videoed everything? And she said, yeah, I did. He said, well, I'm going to show you a couple of clips of some videos. We're going to turn the audio off, and you tell me if you can identify these videos. And it was video of David Anthony Burns driving, and evidently it looked like he was singing, right, in the car. And guess what was on the dashboard? Two pictures of two of Courtney's senior pictures. Now, I know this because Miss Stephanie gave me one way back when I started the investigation, and that's the picture, that one, her cheerleader picture, the ones I kept beside my bed that scared my young son because he knew she had been murdered. And he told me years later that he would come by my bed because of his pictures, but he had two of them, and like where the speedometer and shit go. And when I noticed this, when the camera panned down, guess what he had on? It appeared to me he had on Nike Air Force One shoes, but that wasn't introduced. But they just want to show, I guess he wanted to show Courtney's pictures and whatever, and Anthony's demeanor or whatever. So the last thing he asked her, he said, Lace, he said, Detective Green testified that you were uncooperative in the investigation. She said, that's a lie. And y'all, the Detective Green didn't say that Lace went in and took polygraphs and everything else and did. I mean, she really did cooperate. And they questioned. They were hounding her ass. And she got mad and left the one day. And her uncle, who was a U.S. Marshal, said, hey, you go back in there and you tell the truth. And so she did. She went back in and she took a polygraph and evidently passed it. But Green didn't testify about any of that. He's just saying she wasn't cooperative. I'm calling bullshit on that one, Green. So LaCour gets up and starts to question Lace. He said, that phone call you're talking about, he said, how did it end? He said, like, she had hung up. He said, okay, did you know you're a person of interest in this case, suspected of murdering your sister? She said, yeah, I was a person of interest. And he said, well, and y'all worked together? She said, yeah, we worked together. He said, and all that time you worked together and all the time you spent with your sister, you never noticed she had on the same ring as you or that set to the ring, she said, I never paid attention to the ring. She always had on all kinds of jewelry, like costume jewelry and stuff. She said, I never paid attention to it. He said, well, did you know her roommate? And she said, Alexandra Wolf, or they called her Pocahontas. She said, but she said, I didn't really know her. He said, well, and she said she wasn't living with her at the time she was killed. So she put her out. And she said, yeah. And she said, do you know that she threatened Courtney Coco with bodily harm? And she's like, no, I didn't know that. And she said, well, what about her Alexandra Wolf's ID and ring? And Lace said that after Courtney Coco was killed, she was Lace was cleaning out her own cabinets, and she found Alexandra Wolf's ID and ring, and she turned it over. But I mean, she didn't think anything of it at the time. So then LaCour starts hammering her about the timeline and all the stuff. Now, I told y'all that Miss Stephanie and Lynn and Michelle, Miss Ina kept this like 2,000 page file on Courtney's case, right? He starts questioning about it and hammering about it. I already knew the answer to it. He's hammering about this. Well, what about this in the timeline? What about that? And she was like, she's kind of taken aback. Well, guess what? Lace never had any part in this, y'all. She didn't have it. Dick to do with putting that file together. It was Miss Stephanie, Courtney's mama, Lynn, Courtney's aunt, Miss Ina, Courtney's grandmother, and Michelle Paul, Courtney's other aunt. And they took exquisite notes and all these suspects and everything else. And I had the file. I worked it. And that's where I got all my information from. But he kept hounding about, trying to trip her on it. And she was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. She said, I know my family kept the file. He was like, well, then this was such. She said, I don't know about that. He said, how do you not know about it? She said, I didn't have anything to do with the file. She said, I know they kept the file. She said, I never even read the file. And he was like, oh, okay. All right. And he asked, Hugo stood up and he said, hey, your last call to her was on Thursday. And she said, yes. And then that's what I remember. She said it could have been Friday, but I think it was Thursday. Because that's what LaCour was trying to trip her up on the timeline. That I think it said her last call was on a Friday. So that was just wrong. Or she testified it was Thursday. It doesn't matter. And he said, do you know who Jitty is? And she said, yes, Floyd Lee Williams. And he said, who's that? She said, that was Courtney's boyfriend. And he said, who's Jackie Hampton? She said, that was Courtney's sister. That was Jitty's sister. That was and Courtney's best friend. And Hugo said, about Pocahontas. He said, do you know her? She said, nope, never even met her. Boom. I think Lace was so worried about testifying and all that. And y'all, in the end, she started out crying, but in the end, she was like pissed off for her sister, right? So anyway, the next witness is Charlene Goldman. I think last name now is Dyer. They call her up. Hugo starts the question. I'm going to paraphrase things, y'all, so we don't run out of time. Let's see how much I got left to go. 1 second. Yeah, all right, I'm going to do this. So gets up there. She's probably mid to late 40s, something like that. And he asked, he said, do you know David Anthony Burns? And she said, yeah. He said, do you see him in the courtroom? She said, yeah. He said, where is he? And she pointed to David Anthony Burns. Hugo says, let the record reflect that the witness is pointing out the defendant, David Anthony Burns. So he said, tell me how you met. She said, we met through Chris Clark. Chris Clark and Burns were best friends. They grew up together. He said, tell me about a Toledo Bend camping trip. And she said, well, I had several conversations over a couple of months with Burns that troubled me. She said, one time Burns brought up Veal, a.k.a. Prince, y'all. I told y'all was the guy seen driving Courtney's car in the neighborhood after she'd gone missing that day before it showed up in Houston. And he said what made me uncomfortable about it was that Prince actually murdered somebody right in front of Charlene Goldman, and it was Charlene Goldman's friend. And she said Burns kept bringing it up, and she said it made me uncomfortable. And Prince got 17 years for that murder. So Burns was kind of bragging about murder, and you know, he did it, and everybody saw it, and he only got 17 years or whatever. So then he brings it back to other comments Burns made. She said David Burns made comments. He would make comments about trips to Texas and dropping off a body, et cetera. He said, well, okay, well, tell me about a Toledo Bend camping trip. She said Burns talked to her about Courtney, and that Burns began drinking. And Burns said it was him and Ernestville, y'all, that's Prince, right? And Ernestville's cousin. Then they all had sex with Courtney at one time, but no one would ever find out because they used condoms. And that Burns said he choked, and Hugo's asking questions, so I'm telling you what she said. Burns said he choked Courtney and showed his hands how he did it, and said she was wrapped in plastic and put in a warehouse in Winnie, Texas, off I-10 between Beaumont and Houston. Boom, right? That, don't take that out, Jim. That's fire. And Burns is telling her this. And after he's been drinking, he's telling her all this shit. And Burns said there was a silver Mustang involved, but he never ever said how. But over the next couple of months, he said 5 or 10 times over couple months, Burns kept telling me fucking kill Courtney. And she didn't say fucking shit. He kept telling me he killed Courtney. And she talked to a friend because it really bothered her. And her friend's like, you got to take this to the cops. So she went to Alexandria Police Department sometime between 2009 and 2010 and gave a statement and said the exact same things I just told y'all. All right. And Hugo said, did you know anything about Courtney's murder? Did you know Courtney? She said, no, I never even heard of her. And she said, I didn't know anything except what was on the news. And she said, I had no idea where the body was found or how she was killed, et cetera, until David Anthony Burns told me. Wow. Powerful, right? LaCour gets up and says, well, when in 2010, when you made your statement at Alexandria Police Department, did the detectives have you call David Anthony Burns? And she said, yeah. And he said, well, was anything ever mentioned about Courtney Coco? She said, no. And he didn't say anything about it. And said, well, Prince, were you aware he's the suspect? And she said, no. And he said, well, and you saw him murder someone else, and he got off easy, right? And she said, yeah. I just said, he murdered my friend right in front of me. And said, well, what if I told you Courtney Coco and Prince dated? She said, well, I don't know anything about that. She said, well, LaCour said, well, didn't you possibly hear her body was dumped in Texas? She said, no. He said, well, do you know there's no evidence been presented that her body was ever wrapped in plastic? She said, no, I don't know anything about that. Other than what he told me, her body, he choked her to death and wrapped her body in plastic. And he cuts her off. He said, well, the sex with condoms, and he said, well, you know what? The more he drank, the more he talked about, and she was like, yeah. And so he talked about choking. He said, well, you don't even know if he killed her or when. And you don't know if a Mustang. She said, well, I only know what he told me. He said, well, you don't know if a Mustang was used. She said, no, I only know what he told me. And he said, I tendered the witness. Hugo gets up and says, did you tell the detectives that Burns murdered Courtney Coco? She said, yes, I told them that's what he told me. And he said, did you tell the detectives Burns told you that he choked her to death? She said, and y'all never forget it, she lifted up her hands and she did a choke motion to the courtroom. She said, he did this. He lifted up his hands. He's made a choking motion, and he said, I choked Courtney Coco to death like this. And I'm doing my hands. I choked Courtney Coco to death like this. Then I dumped her body in Winnie, Texas, in an abandoned warehouse. Hugo said, let me ask you something, Miss Charlene. He said, do you have anything against David Anthony Burns? She said, I have absolutely nothing against him other than what he told me. He said, do you want to be here? She said, no, I do not want to be here. He excused the witness. Pretty powerful.
Hey, ladies, are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? Well, you're definitely not alone. There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living in our environment right now. It's in your food, your water, the air you breathe, the clothes you wear, your skincare products. They all mess with your hormones. Then there's the natural hormone changes your body goes through, premenopause, menopause. And while it's a natural process, it doesn't mean you have to suffer through it. The good news is you don't have to suffer through it anymore, because now you have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms in women of all ages. Hormone Harmony is not just a hormone support and supplement. It's become a phenomenon. Women can't stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. And the biggest benefit? Well, my wife says it makes her feel like her own self again. And that's what women mention over and over in the reviews. And there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. And for a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use code RLRC at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC for 15% off today. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC.
All right, y'all. I'm going to touch on this last witness and I'm going to end this episode. So the next witness Hugo calls is Carla. I'm probably going to fuck the name up. Carla Whipstein with Alexandria Police Department. Now she comes in, y'all. She's probably late 30s, close cut haircut, short, thin female. And he gets her on the stand. And he starts with, who are you? Carla, blah, blah, blah. You're a detective with Alexandria Police Department. How long you been doing this? Boom, boom, boom. And he asked her, he said, did you start to work on this case? And she said, yes, I did. He said, what did you do? She said, well, I examined Courtney Coco's cell phone records. And she said, I got a subpoena for Lace's and David Anthony Burns' cell phone and landline records from back in the day. He said, well, where did Courtney work at? He said, Courtney worked at Dr. I think it was Moran, office with Lace. He's a dentist. So in the morning around 6 a.m., they would call each other, like either from the landline to Courtney's cell or from Lace's cell to Courtney's cell, whatever. And then they would obviously they went to work. They were, making sure each other was up or whatever, and they went to work. He said, well, were there ever some calls made from Lace's landline during work hours? She said, yes. There were calls made from Lace's landline to Courtney Coco's cell phone. Now, Lace is at work out. Nobody else had a key but David Anthony Burns calling Courtney's cell phone. He said, well, tell me about some of those. She said, well, on 10/17 at 1:11 p.m., Courtney actually called Burns' cell phone from her cell phone. And then she's given all these dates, y'all. I'm not going to borrow. September 8, 2004, there was a 2-minute phone call between the two. September 9th, there was another call between the two. September 19th, another call. And I think on the 19th, Burns called Courtney's cell phone, and evidently she didn't answer or whatever, but Courtney called right back. There was also record that Courtney called Lace's and David's landline and would immediately hang up and call David Anthony Burns' cell phone. On September 17th, Courtney called Burns' phone, and then it hung up, and the landline called Courtney's cell phone back. On October 1st, the last call made on Courtney's Coco's cell phone before it turned up in Houston, Texas, was at 4:30 a.m., and it was called to Jitty, which is Courtney's boyfriend's other girlfriend's mom's residence. She was able to establish that. And then Courtney's phone began to ping again on October the 3rd at 10 p.m. Sunday night. Around 10 p.m. Sunday night, it shows up in Houston, Texas. And that was it. The Corps, asked her whatever kind of questions. It didn't amount to a hill of beans. And they excused her. So we're down to the nut cutting time now, y'all. And the next episode, I'm going to do the last of the witnesses and the closing arguments. And it'll be the last episode I'm going to do on this case. But you need to hear it. It's important. Basically, Hugo's establishing exactly what he said in the beginning in opening arguments, which you heard. But, everything from them having an affair to, the ring being recovered off Courtney's body, to the cell phone calls, to Lace testifying that she heard Courtney on David's phone, whatever. Then you got the witnesses that David Anthony Burns, independent of each other, over the years, told that he murdered Courtney Coco and dumped her body in an abandoned building in Winnie, Texas. Pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. So we're about to wrap it up. Now, real life, real crime announcements, and I'll finish this series next week. Y'all, we have the Real Life, Real Crime Community app. Go to the App Store, download it for free. It has everything Real Life, Real Crime on steroids. It's got all the news articles and forums and chat groups and games. It's got everything. Our merchandise stores on there. I go there first every day and post and respond to people who have posted because I keep getting locked out of Facebook. Now, of course, we still have the crew page. I think 38,000, 34,800. I don't remember. It's a lot. It's up in the 30s. And then I have all my other Facebook pages, but I keep getting locked out. I'm going to the app first. If I don't get to respond to you in the crew page or wherever, go to the app. I'll respond. And it's that simple. I like to, stay in touch with everybody, and that's just what I do. I probably spend 8 hours a day doing that. But then, of course, I'm on Instagram at Real Life, Real Crime, and at Overton Woody. And we have a YouTube channel and all that stuff. And you probably get another video of last week. I don't even know when this episode is going to drop because I'm so far ahead. But I'll be frying turkeys again. Maybe I'll take some questions or whatever. Crew Bash, February 3rd and 4th, downtown Baton Rouge. February 3rd is the VIP event. That ticket gets you into the VIP event, which is going to be a throwdown. I get to hang out with everybody, take pictures, sign autographs, and party with y'all. And we have a DJ or whatever. We'll do an auction again that night for LOPA. And our big LOPA raffle tickets will be on sale by now. And we'll do a special drop about that and all the different prizes. And you want to donate, you can still donate a prize, and we'll put you on there. But the goal is to raise money for LOPA, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. And we should have our hotel block listed. It is the weekend of the Spanish Town Mardi Gras Parade, so we can only get like 50 rooms at a time at one hotel, and 10 rooms at a time at another hotel at a special rate. Because I'm going to tell you something, they're going to triple before that Spanish Town Mardi Gras. Now, it's not Mardi Gras, y'all. It's the big Baton Rouge Parade before the big Mardi Gras in New Orleans. But we did it 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. I did it the same weekend. Everything's fine. Parking's not an issue, whatever. They have plenty of parking downtown. The parade will be over. And Saturday night's a live adult, never before heard adult, real life, real crime, throwdown podcast. And when I get done, the Chase Tyler band's going to play, and Chase Tyler, and they're going to rock the house. If you've been before, I know you're going to want to come again. But I think that we only have it's 250 VIP tickets available, and then so we have another not even 400 for sale for Saturday night. Y'all come and check it out. Bloody Angola, my other podcast with my producer Jim Chapman. We have a live scheduled at Southeastern Satellite Campus in Walker, and it's scheduled for January 14th. I know those tickets are sold out by now. If we can get more dates, we'll sell them. That's going to be a very private. It's an intimate setting. It's 150 seats. It's like it's in a auditorium that's made for speeches, and each person has their own padded back seat, and there's going to be a mimosa. There will be alcohol served there. We'll have a mimosa truck and beers and stuff like that. And we're going to do a live Bloody Angola. And when we get done, we're going to stay and take pictures and sign autographs until everybody's done. And when I did this for Real Life Real Crime in the beginning, this same people, Miss Crystal Hardison and them, back then it was Kelly Jennings too, gave us a start, and we sold out 3 nights in a row, right? So that was the start of Real Life Real Crime doing lives. And so you get a chance, come and check that out if there's still tickets available. It'll be worth a while. And I think that's it. The Real Life Real Crime daily show, I probably have done a special drop by now. We're going to be starting a 3-day-a-week live national and local news coverage show. You're going to get Real Life Real Crime daily. Me and Jim Chapman are going to be bringing the heat on all the top stories. It's really going to be interesting. It's not Fox. It's not CNN. It's Woody Overton and Jim Chapman, and you're going to hear it like you never heard it from anybody else. So all you lifers, I love and appreciate you. Thank you for your support. Please don't forget about Miss Barbara Blunt. Y'all, we got justice for Courtney. We got justice for Mary. Justice for Kim Womack. That case has been taken from an accident to being worked as a homicide. I can't do anything about the progress or lack of progress thereof. It's an old case. I'm sure the fine guys at Point Capee Sheriff's Office are handling their business to the best of their ability. So prayers on that case, but huge repair errors, and we need leads on Barbara Blunt's case. Call them in, email it in. I don't care. You can remain anonymous. This is the one gray well. All right. Somebody knows what happened to Barbara Blunt. So help us out on that. Patreon and Convicts, you should be getting another episode soon, a bonus episode. The last one you got was War, and that's everything that happened to me while I was working, 3 years to get justice for Courtney Coco, and I detail everything that happened. So anyway, thank you for your support. As you know, this show couldn't run without you. If you want to become a patron or convict, you get early releases, commercial-free episodes. You get bonus episodes. Same thing for Bloody Angola. You get bonus episodes and early commercial-free releases and stuff like that. And there's different tier levels, but go check it out on Real Life Real Crime Community app, or go to Patreon. If you want to be a Patreon member, they have all our different tiers for Real Life Real Crime on there. in the app, we have what we call convicts, and that basically are subscribers through the app. And it's the same thing, same monetary amounts, same benefits. It's just some people like Patreon, some don't. And convicts is a lot easier for us to manage everything. But that being said, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, it's our jam. Buy your raffle tickets. There's going to be some fantastic prizes that'll be drawn for the night of the live bash in the 4th annual crew bash. And if you are a lifer from Saskatchewan, Canada, right, and you want to become an organ donor, you don't have to be from Louisiana. Go to lopa.org, fill out a little 2-minute thing, become an organ donor. People, they save lives every day, right? Chances of your organs ever getting used are slim to none, but they do. And I know people that are alive today because of organ donors. Lopa.org, be a hero, give the gift of life. And I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. Until next time or ever, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?